And now enjoy this free Jason Modcast show.
Who are you? I'm Batman.
Who are you?
My name is
Bond.
I'm
Batman.
name's Bond.
James Bond.
I'm Batman.
Bond. James Bond.
I'm Batman.
I'm Batman.
This is the Batman vs. James Bond show. The show covering everything related to Batman and James Bond movies. And now, here's your host, Brian Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to an all-new episode of the Batman vs. James Bond show. The name's Thomas, Brian Thomas, and I am your host. And this is the show where we discuss everything related to Batman and James Bond movies. It is great to be back, and I'm glad you can join me. I hope you all have had an excellent week. I know I had a very busy week. Let me just say, it's not easy growing up, and, I'm going into a little spurt right here, whatever you want to call it. Spent the weekend just, if you check out my Instagram page, real quick plug, at Batman vs. Bond, you understand that the Batcave and the Bruce Wayne estate, whatever, the 007 Skyfall estate, it's new. Like I said, I've only been moved in here for about not even a week now. Well, about a week, actually, since I last recorded. And it's getting everything together. Now, of course, most importantly, the thing I had to do was, where am I going to put my cosplay Batman costume? And, let's just say that I tricked the wife into letting me have the bigger room. That way I can put the costume on display. And, once you check out my Instagram, then you'll know what I mean. So nice little week here of painting and remodeling and all kinds of stuff. But other than that, you don't want to hear about that. We are here to talk about Batman and James Bond, of course. That's why you're here. That's why you're tuning into this program. So, at the time of recording, we are less than 4 days away from, wait for it, the premiere of Suicide Squad. Finally, yes. I am like a little kid right about now. I'm all excited. I see a toy for the Joker. I see, pictures of Harley Quinn. I see pictures of Killer Croc, Deadshot all over the place and all over the internet and stuff like that. The actual premiere in New York City is taking place as we speak. I'm recording on a Monday for those of you that didn't know, on August 1st. Dateline, August 1st. And I'm a little amped up on caffeine, clearly, too. Anyway, I am so ready to see this movie. Like I said, most anticipated movie of the year, easily. Batman v Superman, with all due respect to that, I was very excited to see that, obviously Batman, Superman on the same screen and so forth, but this is just something about this movie I'm really excited about. No, it's not just Margot Robbie and the Harley Quinn outfit. No, and not just that. Just everything that they've shown since last year at San Diego Comic-Con 2015, and just the news about it. I mean, I don't know if it's the actors, it's the tone of this movie. It just looks like it's a very kind of like a, every time I'm seeing like the cast and crew do interviews for this, especially like Will Smith, Margot Robbie, Jared Leto, Jay Courtney, and whoever else. I mean, everybody seems to be having a great time. Something about this, I have such a good feeling about it. Of course, if you're a fan of this and you do something like I do, I'm known for checking a certain website called Rotten Tomatoes. Now, I'll be the first to tell you, I don't know why I checked that website, and I'm not the biggest fan of it, but at the same time, I can't help but look at it, kind of because I want to know, how are the critics responding to it? And then when the movie is released later on in the week, I'm always like, okay, well, let's leave it to the fans. Let's leave it to the audience to see what the average, kind of review is going to be. What is their feedback on it? Because at the end of the day, sure, a lot of us, especially me, I could criticize critics, they're biased because they like a certain studio better and they don't like DC Comics, or they're, whatever. They're on the payroll, they're on the take, something like that. I don't think they are. I don't think they are. I think that, they're very picky about what they see. If it's not something fresh and brand new, or just, I don't know. They're very odd. They really are. But at the end of the day, it's about what you guys think about it. It's about what I think about it. I mean, you do listen to my reviews, and hopefully we'll be listening next week. Which reminds me, a special programming note, I will be doing a full review of Suicide Squad next week. Shocker. It will be broken into a non-spoiler section, and then I'll lead into some spoilers, of course. I will let you guys know, during that episode, kind of like how I did for the Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice review. I did the first half of the episode, non-spoiler, and then, like, by the end of it, I went into all spoilers. So, if you want to hear about it, like I said, if you're not excited to see this movie, if you're a Batman fan, or if you're a comics fan, or just a fan of movies in general, I don't think you have to be a Batman fan. And the reason I say that is because I'm dragging my wife to the movies to see this now. She's familiar with, Batman. She knows who Joker is. She knows who Harley Quinn is. And she knows who Will Smith is. So that's enough to sell her to go see this movie. And honestly, if I had to be a betting man, I think that's more than enough for Warner Brothers to get a crowd in there. When I just last looked at the numbers of, they do the projections of what the opening box office is going to be. A lot of them are saying, at least over 100 million, maybe even 140 million. I gotta say that, this, given a summer of movies that we've had and so forth, I think that this might be the big one, or this might be like, the best for last in a way. And I'm not just saying that because I'm excited to see the movie. I think that all the pieces are in place for this. So the way they've done the marketing, the cast that they have, just everything about it, I think they've done everything right. The non-spoilers that they have had so far in their trailers. I mean, maybe you saw something in there that I didn't see. Honestly, I think that the studio's done a great job about just kind of keeping it, to itself. And, it looks to be just a fun movie. So, for all the listeners out there that are fans of this, of the Batman movies, or and if you happen to be a James Bond movie fan, then, I suggest that you go try to see this movie. I think that it could be fun for everybody, all things considered. So, anyway, so like I said, Suicide Squad review will be all next week, or will be an all review of Suicide Squad next week's episode. So, before we get down to business tonight, as always, I'd like to remind everyone to please subscribe to the Batman vs. James Bond show on Spreaker and iTunes, and leave a nice little review for me on there. Thank you. Now, as I always like to mention, see, like I said, this never gets old. I never get tired of saying this, especially for you new listeners. Welcome. I am not a movie critic. Duh. Because I just bashed on the critics a little bit. Yeah. I'm not a movie blogger for a website. Well, it would be cool to be a movie blogger for a website, maybe one day. I am just a guy who's obsessed with Batman and James Bond. Clearly. Yeah, that's why I do this. I honestly love the characters. I love the universes, especially the movie universes. Actually, I started reading the new DC Universe Batman comic. I just got into that, so I'll let you know how that is. Like I said, I know I do only movies on here, but so far, like I said, I'm really enjoying it. So, lots and lots to get to this week. I did tease this last week, and I'm not going to spend a full episode doing it just because it was a shorter movie than I guess I anticipated. I kind of knew going in it was going to be about an hour and a half, and yes, I'm talking about Batman the Killing Joke. I did want to start off the episode doing a review on that. Don't worry, Batman or James Bond fans, I'm not going to spend the whole time on that. We'll get into more James Bond stuff later on, as I always do. The reason for that is because there really isn't much James Bond news. It's all tabloids and rumors about maybe Tom Hiddleston's going to be James Bond. Is Barbara Broccoli going to shoot the movie in the next couple of years, or is she going to take like a small hiatus? We just don't know. So, and obviously, given everything that's happening right now with the DC Extended Universe, it's going to be a lot more Batman. So, but don't worry, James Bond fans, I never let you guys down, ever. This upcoming month, we're going to be doing some more special episodes, kind of like I said with Villains. I'm going to keep teasing that. More news to come with that. But let's start right now with the Batman Killing Joke review. So, I went to see this movie, and I think I said this before, that this was my first, I'm no stranger to the Batman animated TV series when I was a kid. I think it was back in like 1992, give or take. I was a little kid then. I think I was in like elementary school. That shows you how old I am. Now, I've always heard about the Killing Joke. One of my best friends has always told me like about this before, and he's the one who actually talked me into going to see this. I mean, and I say talking me into it. I mean, he said Batman. I'm like, okay, Batman, Batman movie. Of course, I want to go see the Batman movie. Absolutely. I mean, the first thing anytime somebody says Batman, they call me even Batman at work, and I'm like, oh, hey, yeah. So I was all excited about this. Now, what I knew going in, and like I said, you can treat me as a novice when it comes to this. Like I said, this is like kind of uncharted territory for me. Like I said, when it comes to the comics, I mean, I'm familiar with everything I've seen in the movies, and the nerds can bash on me and trolls can bash on me for that because all my knowledge has ever been based on the Batman movies. Now, of course, I've read up on it before, but some of this new stuff I'm not familiar with. They're just like the whole idea of the graphic novel, The Killing Joke. So, for those of you that were like me, here's the synopsis of what The Killing Joke is. It's based on the 1988 graphic novel, the same name, written by Alan Moore, and it is illustrated by Brian Bolland. As Batman hunts for the escaped Joker, the clown prince of crime attacks the Gordon family to prove a diabolical point, mirroring his own fallenness into madness. In other words, what this is, if I had to sum it up, and everybody else, you could probably, let me know what your our point of view is on this, but it's a Joker origin story to a point, or at least the second half of this movie is, okay? So, before I even get into the movie, when I went into the movie, they did like this little monologue, and it was actually by Mark Hamill, and it starts off with and I'll put the spoiler alert right now because, if you didn't have a chance to see it in theaters, unfortunately it was only in theaters last Monday and last Tuesday, the 25th and 26th, but it already is on video. So, I'm putting up the spoiler alert. So, as the film rolls and so forth, it has a little monologue by Mark Hamill, and he has a nice little conversation on there, or interview that he did, and he talked about how he's reprising the role as the Joker that he's been voicing since 1992. I really enjoyed it, and what was really cool is that they started off with showing him and George Lucas in a black and white picture, and I'm like, what is this? I was like, they're going to do a Star Wars, and I was like, oh, that's right. Okay, I see what they're doing here. So what they did is that, how Hamill went from getting the Joker, started off as Luke Skywalker. For those of you that aren't Star Wars fans, Luke Skywalker is like by far like one of the cooler characters and one of the most important characters in the Star Wars universe. But where it led up with that is that during 1977, when he had just gotten the role for that, right after that, they not too long, he ended up, eventually getting the voice of the Joker. So when you think about this, you have the biggest hero ever, Luke Skywalker, and I consider one of the bigger heroes if we're talking outside Batman and James Bond, but he is so iconic for being Luke Skywalker, and then you're going to have him voice the baddest of the bad, the almighty villain, the Joker, and, it's like, oh, wow, I mean, how can he go from doing that? And when they showed like videos of him getting behind that microphone, looking at the script and reading it, not only does his voice transform, but just the expressions on this, he goes into character like no one I have ever seen before, and it's amazing, it's insane to a point, just because it's like he lives and breathes the Joker, and I mean, just hello bats, and I can't even do it, but you just try to picture every time you hear the Joker, 9 times out of 10, it's always been Mark Hamill, it was always him, and credit to the guys who voiced the Joker, since him, whether it was in the Batman Arkham games, I think there was a different voice at least in one of the games, but or even now too. So going on with that though, Mark Hamill had always talked about saying, I didn't want, after a certain point after the Arkham games, I wanted to call it quits, but the only way I would ever do it is if they did The Killing Joke, and that's how this came up. And he went on to say that how The Killing Joke earns its R rating, and it is definitely not for kids because it's such a dark movie, and it takes the character to such a dark place. But I really enjoyed that, so that was a good treat, especially if you got to see it in theaters. I'm sure, I'm probably going to be buying The Killing Joke, maybe not this week, but whenever payday comes in again, I'll probably end up buying it. But it wouldn't surprise me if they had it like in the making or some special features on the Blu-ray, DVD, however you buy it. So let's go into the movie here. Let me just say that this is obviously if you didn't know, not only is the I guess we'll call it comic, if you want to call it graphic novel, it's a very controversial one, because it's so dark and the stuff that, happens in it, just everything that I know about it, like I said. Now what they did end up doing was they added about a 20 to 30 minute prologue that focuses on Batgirl. And what it does is it expands on her character and kind of, as they said, elaborates her importance in the story. So, and that's another controversial part in there too, because I'll say this, that the way the comic book starts, to the best of my knowledge, is that how Batman walks into, Arkham Asylum, and he meets Jim Gordon there, and then he ends up going to visit the Joker. Now, before all this, you have, like I said, the 20 to 30 minute opening here. And it involves Batgirl, Barbara Gordon. It is voiced by Tara Strong. She's done like Batgirl before in several other animated movies, and she's done Harley Quinn in the Batman Arkham Asylum game. So what it does is the movie opens up with Barbara Gordon, Batgirl, and she's trying to stop a robbery, but ends up failing, and the bad guy, and yeah, you'll laugh at this name too, as I did, Paris Franz, he escapes, and whatever, Franz was trying to get away with, I think it was like some kind of armored car, I think he was just trying to pull some kind of robbery heist or whatever, and, it seems, at least the way I took it, is that Batgirl is still, kind of learning. She's kind of got like the training wheels on, like Batman was there to help save her, or back her up and so forth, but it's Batman's show. Batman is the one running things as he always has been, but he was willing to take Barbara Gordon on as a partner. Obviously, Jim Gordon has no idea, about what his daughter does late at night. He assumes that she is just kind of like this girl who works in the library, just like this goody two-shoes, but obviously she's not. She's helping fight crime with Batman. And you can tell how she kind of, has that novice approach to it and so forth, and she's kind of clumsy to a point. I mean, she still kicks major ass. I mean, that was really cool to see. I mean, like I said, I didn't know much about Batgirl. I mean, I've always seen, just a little bit here and there about her. But, seeing this story for me, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed what was happening already. So as the story goes on, Batman's kind of lecturing her. He's saying, you need to be more careful and so forth. And at the same time, there's Franz in the background, and he ends up becoming obsessed with her, and he starts like sending her messages on the phone and so forth, and it kind of leads her to, kind of like, I don't know what to do about this. So it ends up her kind of, how do I say this? She's interested in him to a point. She's trying to figure him out, and she tries to go off on her own when Batman kind of warned her about like, hey, this guy's dangerous. And, he even makes the comment to her, or she makes the comment to him saying, well, we've dealt with harder people or harder criminals than him before. And Batman's trying to warn her saying, okay, but listen, rookie, you don't know what you're about to get yourself into. You haven't seen the dark side. You haven't seen the abyss, because I've seen it before, and it's not pretty, and there's no turning back from that. And, from then on, Batgirl, of course, doesn't listen, and I say of course just because that's, the part of being a rookie and a novice, no matter what the story is, you kind of go with it. We've seen James Bond do that before, even in like, Casino Royale, where he kind of just goes with it, and even though against, M's orders and so forth, so take it as that. So Franz ends up getting in a fight with her, beats her up, and then, Batman tries to come save the day, which he does again, and it ends up being another time that, Franz sends her messages, and what he does is he actually kills his uncle, but leads, Barbara Gordon, Batgirl, to the dead body and trying to set her up in a way. So this leads to Batman wanting to officially putting his foot down, saying, all right, you're going to sit this one out, and that's it. And of course, Barbara ends up saying, no, you don't control me, you don't know me, who do you think you are, and so forth. And then it leads into what everybody's been calling the Batman Batgirl love scene, and quite a surprise for me, might I say. I knew it was a rated R movie, and they don't show anything. I'm not going there with that at all. She does, kind of straddle him to a point. Yeah, no, there's no to a point. She actually does, but everything you see is off camera. But they do end up making out, and she takes off the costume and the cowl and so forth. But for you dirty birdies out there, but that is a part that definitely bothered a lot of people. I guess we might as well talk about it while we're right here. Is that there's a lot of backlash about this. Just with the whole Barbara Gordon section, and so forth, and why was that necessary and so forth? Well, I don't think, I know there's a story out there where Batman ended up getting Barbara Gordon pregnant and so forth. But I don't know. It didn't bother me. I think it, kind of showed just, how Barbara Gordon was kind of, I'm not saying that she turned Batman or whatever, but she kind of had that, in a way, I don't know how old she is in this. I can only imagine. And I can only imagine that Batman's that seasoned Cape Crusader. So there might be obviously a big gap in the age difference. That probably bothered a lot of people. It doesn't bother me so much, but I guess what bothered me, if anything, was that did it need to be in that movie? I would say possibly not. It wasn't necessary. I think it was extra just thrown in there to lead into the bigger story, which we'll be talking about in another second. But it is what it is. If that's the direction they decide to go into, I mean, I can live with it. It wasn't necessary, though, and that's my point of view on that. So moving on with that, she's still, they're still trying to track down Paris Franz. Batman's going on this alone, and then Franz sets a trap for him, and, shoots some rockets at the Batmobile, another Batmobile in damage and so forth, and guess who's there to help back him up but Batgirl. And by the time she makes it to Paris, France, she is kind of lost it. She is, to the point where she's about to beat him unconsciously, if she didn't already. And then she realizes what she had done. They showed the damage that was to Paris, and that was kind of like, okay, I know what point you're talking about here. I've reached that point. So what does she do? She turns in the cape and her cowl, and to Batman saying, okay, this isn't for me, and I'm kind of done with this lifestyle, but, it is what it is. So that's all of a sudden, after this, that's when they cut in. That's like that first 20, 30 minutes, if I had to sum it up. Like I said, was the Barbara Gordon part necessary? Maybe. Well, we can look at that even more in a little while. So let's move on to the biggest part, which is obviously the Killing Joke, okay? The Killing Joke section. This is what the whole comic book was based on. Let me read off this quote, okay? Because I think this is one of the most amazing quotes ever in a Batman movie, and I could listen to this quote over and over again. I could possibly see it being replayed in a live-action movie eventually. And this is from Batman. I've been thinking a lot lately about you and me, about what's going to happen to us in the end. We're going to kill each other, aren't we? Perhaps you'll kill me. Perhaps I'll kill you. Perhaps sooner. Perhaps later. I just want you to know that I've made a genuine attempt to talk things over and avert that outcome. Just once. Are you listening to me? It's life and death I'm discussing here. Maybe my death. Maybe yours. I don't fully understand why ours should be such a fatal relationship, but I don't want your murder on my hands. That quote, oh my God, is just, it's amazing. It's so well written. And, if you look, let's examine this quote in general, okay? Before we even get to the Batman and Joker part of the movie. This is Batman it's like a plea to the Joker. It's like, dude, I don't want to kill you, okay? I know you want to mess with me so much, but at the end of the day, I'm trying to help you. I don't want this to end off in death. I'm trying to do everything I can, and you know what? If that's what it's going to be, then it's, that's what it's going to be. But I want to avoid this because what's my rule? I don't kill people, at least in most of the Batman movies. Anyway, but this Batman, at least in the comic book, or at least in this movie, is a Batman who's trying to reason with the Joker. And other interpretations we've seen of Batman and the Joker, it's just been, okay, well, Batman's just trying to catch the Joker. I don't think, at least in the Michael Keaton one, Batman 1989, I don't think he was trying to plead with the Joker at all. I think he was just trying to, catch him, and then, if it resulted in him, being, batarang to the gargoyle and falling off the roof of the building, then so be it. With Dark Knight, with Batman and Joker, Batman was trying not to kill the Joker even as much as he tried, and, he almost let him fall from a building, but he didn't. He ended up being put in jail or whatever, if he ended up going to Arkham Asylum, I'm not too sure. But this Batman, this is not a conversation I could really see a Christian Bale or Michael Keaton Batman ever having with the Joker. This might be, I'd like to see if they attempt this in, the Ben Affleck Batmans. I really would. But, as we move on from that, this movie is, a great Batman and Joker, I guess I don't want to say fight, but it's kind of like the psychological part of it, I guess. And then even going with that, it kind of had that thriller feel to it. It wasn't, it had action. Even for an animated movie, and I'm not meaning as an insult, but it definitely had a lot of action, especially at the beginning. They threw that in there. But when it gets to this part, it kind of gets like that psychological. And just even going back to that quote, I don't fully understand why ours should be such a fatal relationship. I don't want your murder on my hands. Looking at all that, it's just, wow, okay, this is really the most psychological look that we've ever had at Batman and the Joker. And throughout this story, throughout this, other 2/3 of the movie, we really get that look at, like, we get flashbacks of the Joker and before he actually becomes the Joker. And, it ended up being him being like this comedian, and he wasn't a funny comedian, and he was married and his wife was pregnant. And, in order to make money, he ended up going to work for some mobsters to try to sneak into the factory because he knew the layout of it. And what ended up happening is his wife ended up dying, and I think it was like a car accident or something. And and that he ended up still going along to go on this little heist, and ended up going south. And here's the thing that they had him do is they had him put on the red hood, I guess you could say, with the cape. And when they went on this heist, when they snuck into the factory, it was the playing card and where the chemicals are. It probably might as well have been Access chemicals to a point. And what happened is that, they had him put on the red, I guess like the red hood and the cape and so forth, because they were acting like the robbers or the bad guys, the real bad guys, were trying to pull one over on the Joker before he became the Joker, and just trying to set him up. And that's exactly what they did. But it ended up resulting in those two guys dying by the police, and Batman ends up showing up on the scene. And then he doesn't like throw the Joker into the chemicals, but it just, I believe it was the Joker that fell into the chemicals by mistake, and Batman wasn't able to save him. And when he comes, he still has the mask on when he falls into the chemicals. When he comes out of there, he's takes off the mask and he's laughing, and he actually is the Joker. He's got the white face and he's doing that iconic laugh and so forth, which I'm not going to attempt. So as they're doing all this, though, they're, like I said, they're doing flashbacks, and that's kind of like the Joker origin story that we see. But going back a little bit, when that 2/3 of the movie starts, like I said, Batman is walking into Arkham Asylum. He meets Commissioner Gordon there, and he goes into the cell, and he reads off that quote that I did before. I've been thinking a lot, and so forth. Now, when this happens, all you're seeing is just a shadow over Joker's face, and he's just looks like he's playing solitaire. He's playing just cards, and you just hear the sound of the cards and Batman talking and so forth. Very much reminds me of the Dark Knight interrogation scene, and I loved every second of it as much as I loved this. And all of a sudden, Batman's like, answer me, say something. And then he pulls the guy out of the shadows, and it ends up not being the Joker, but just somebody else who was dressed up in white makeup and just, being a fake Joker. And then, Batman realizes that he had escaped. He ends up going to this real estate, and it ends up being the property of a carnival that's no longer in business. And he ends up buying the property from the guy after he kills him. I don't want to say he buy, but he kind of acted like he was about to buy. He was very interested in it. And it ends up turning out that, he had some of his kind of like strange, circus freaks working for him there. All kinds of crazy people there. To make a long story short, though, Joker opens it back up, and he has a plan, obviously, as he always does. And what ends up happening is that they shoot to a scene where Commissioner Gordon and Barbara Gordon are kind of having like a dad and daughter kind of like night at their like dinner over Barbara Gordon's house. And then all of a sudden Barbara Gordon opens the door, and who's at the door but the Joker? And she has this oh my god kind of look on her face, and the Joker just is smiling. He's in his Hawaiian shirt. He's in like he's like he's a tourist. He has the sunglasses on. He has like this I think it was a purple hat I'm trying to picture in my mind. He's pointing a revolver, and I think he has a camera on too, and then he just fires one shot and shoots Barbara Gordon right in the stomach. And it's like he knew exactly what he was doing, because when he did this, he wasn't trying to kill her, he was trying to paralyze her, and that obviously comes into play if you know the backstory to Batgirl. Make a long story short, though, she falls on the table and so forth, and he's doing his really, really dark humor and so forth, and then he kidnaps Commissioner Gordon. At the same time, though, Batman is trying to track down where, what happened, and he's trying to go around the city trying to find the Joker. He's beating up on thugs. Where is he? That kind of thing and so forth. Obviously, that's been borrowed from this comic also. And like I said, there's a lot of elements that were borrowed from this. I even read that Tim Burton, held up the Killing Joke saying, this is what I want to do and so forth when he was making Batman in 89. The Dark Knight definitely borrowed a lot from this, and that's what makes this movie so interesting because you see those elements of Batman like they've actually been in the live action movies, and I really like that about that. I can't say this enough. It's a very violent and a very dark movie. As we go on here, though, we'll fast forward. I know I'm just trying to recap as much as I can with this, but I will say that, obviously Batman, ends up catching up with the Joker, but at the same time, the Joker pulls one of the most crazy things that I've ever seen a Joker do, is that he strips down Commissioner Gordon completely naked. He takes him through like this ride of like what I would say is kind of like this haunted ride, if anything. And he has like these little, I guess we'll call them little minions, almost like these crazy looking minions, just right out of the comic books. And they showed the pictures of the comic book. That's how I know, or the graphic novel. And it might as well have been the comic or the adaptation of this comic book, because it was everything that was apparently in there is right on the big screen. So he's taking him, he's making him question, he's trying to make him go insane to a point, and he practically does. He even goes as far as, he stripped Barbara Gordon completely naked and took pictures of her. And then he ends up showing these pictures to Commissioner Gordon, and this is after, Joker had shot her and so forth. So it just shows you how dark of a character this Joker is. And now we have no idea what happened to Barbara Gordon after he had stripped the clothes off of her. One can only imagine what had happened to this. I've always heard speculation that, he could have raped her. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But, given that, still the fact though is that, Commissioner Gordon is seeing this and he's just completely losing his mind. So, let's fast forward here. Batman ends up showing up at the carnival, and he fights with some of these circus freaks, we'll call them, and then he catches up with the Joker, and he has kind of a showdown. Before he has the showdown with the Joker, he talks to Commissioner Gordon before he goes and chases after the Joker, and Commissioner Gordon says something to the 6'10", saying, "I want him brought in by the book." And that goes back to a scene in there where they were, Joker was trying to mess with Commissioner Gordon, saying about what would you do if this if somebody didn't follow the law and so forth. And Commissioner Gordon said, then, I would arrest him or something along those lines and so forth. So that's where they were going with by the book. So even as Batman's trying to track down the Joker through this, and they end up having their fight, there's two really classic lines. "All it takes is one bad day." And then, of course, the other line is, "Why aren't you laughing?" And it's great. I mean, it's just the dialogue between these two. It's, it goes back to, even with The Dark Knight, just what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object, the whole Zeno's paradox and so forth. And that's exactly what this is. Batman does not want to kill the Joker. He's trying everything he can not to. The Joker is trying to almost force Batman to kill him. And, like I said, it's very, very dark, and like I said, the whole psychological feel to it, and like I said, it's a really interesting take on a Batman versus Joker, and it's everything I wanted it to be with that. Now, having said that, let's go into the ending, and this is where I'll put the biggest spoiler alert on here. It ends up being where there's just more dialogue where Batman saying, I will help, I want to help you. I want to, I can help revive you. I know you have probably had a life before this and so forth. I can, kind of not mentor you, but we can make you better again and so forth. And it's, like I said, that's not something you would see with a Christian Bale or even a Michael Keaton Batman. Majority, 9 times out of 10, they just say, all right, you're going to jail, or I'm just going to, drop you off the roof of the building and so forth. So, and this, like I said, even from the beginning, it's just Batman pleading to the Joker, saying, "I want to help you, and I want to make things, I can help make you better. I will try," and so forth. And the Joker's just like, "No, it's not going to be like that." So what ends up happening now is that the Joker ends up telling this joke, and I'm not going to go into the joke, but make a long story short, the movie ends off with the Batman laughing and the Joker laughing, and it fades to black. Okay. So when this happened, half the audience was like clapping, half the audience is like, what the crap? What just happened here? And then I look over to my friend, and he's like, that's exactly how the comic ended, because no one knew exactly what happened after that. People interpreted it differently. Now, people have said, okay, maybe Batman killed the Joker. Maybe Batman took the Joker to jail, put him back into Arkham Asylum. Nobody knows, but that's what makes this the Killing Joke. So I look at that as a kind of an interesting ending to the movie, and of course, I wanted more out of this. I mean, the whole last week, I've been thinking, man, I mean, I really want to know what happened with this, but there's nothing else that happened in the comic book, apparently. So, I want to, of course, hear everybody's thoughts on this. Right now, I'm at least going to give the Killing Joke portion, or just the movie itself, I'll give it a 4. Man, this is tough. I've been thinking about this all week. I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. The 0.5, the minus deduction is definitely going to be in the Batgirl portion. I guess I'm in the majority of that where it's just... It was good. It was really good. Like I said, the love scene wasn't necessary at all. The movie was short, and I wish that they could have expanded more along the lines of Batman and the Joker. And if they would have even made up their own ending after that instead of leaving it just like that, if they could have added more to just showing the Batman versus the Joker at the very beginning instead of having so much Batgirl. I mean, they keep saying the reason they did the whole Batgirl portion is just to kind of like emphasize like her being shot, her turning into the Oracle and so forth. But honestly, though, I really, really loved this movie. Like I said, probably one of the better Batman movies I've ever seen. A great Joker movie. If you are a fan of Batman and the Joker, this is one you definitely have to see. And, I definitely would highly recommend it. So yeah, let's shift gears here. Let's talk a little bit of news real quick. I know it took up more time than I expected to, but I did want to talk about, obviously, Suicide Squad is coming out this week. I'm going on Thursday. Hopefully a lot of people get to see it, if not Thursday night on the unofficial opening, but they get to see it this weekend, and definitely let me know your take on it. We'll sound the spoiler alert again for this because this kind of is going to spoiler territory. Okay, so per Deadline Hollywood, Ezra Miller is going to make a second cameo this year in a DC film movie, and it is going to be Suicide Squad. Now, whether it's going to be as Barry Allen or it's going to be The Flash, that's to be determined. The critics are having their screenings as we speak, if they haven't already. They haven't released their reviews yet, like I said. No idea about the length of, Ezra Miller's appearance as the Flash, or, if it's going to be Barry Allen. The studio had nothing to comment about this, but my take on this is, everything I've seen with the Flash, I've loved so far. If I had to be a betting man, and I like doing this because I like to, kind of hypothesize, if you will. I like to just, make a quick determination. I would say that you're going to see Barry Allen. You're not going to see the Flash in there. And if you even see the Flash in there, one, you're just going to see him speed by really quick. Maybe he'll tie up a criminal or two. Who knows? If you see him as Barry Allen, he's probably going to be kind of like in a CSI, kind of like a criminal, a forensic guy in there at most, but I wouldn't expect too much. Something tells me this was filmed just recently and kind of added in probably last minute, maybe when they were doing their reshoots. No idea. So something to look forward to because, obviously it ties everything together. And, like I said, everything I've seen with, the Justice League trailer, or if you want to call it the footage that they've showed at Comic-Con, I really enjoyed, so I'm looking forward to this. All right, so some more quick news about Suicide Squad. David Ayer ended up responding. He's obviously doing his press junkets right now, and there was a few questions asked by the reporter that I found kind of interesting. The biggest one is going to be, what was the most ridiculous rumor that he had heard while making the movie? And quoted saying, that is that the Joker is Jason Todd, and he looked right at the camera and he said, it ain't the case, he's not. So for those of you that don't know who Jason Todd is, he's in Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, we see the Robin costume and it said, ha ha, Batman, and so forth, that's in the Batcave, and it ends up being, it was confirmed before that it was actually Jason Todd who was Robin. Okay. Now, a lot of people were speculating for some odd reason that Jason Todd is the Joker, and obviously it's not true. David Ayer, the director of the movie, came out and said it. Now, we've also been told before in a James Bond movie that Christoph Waltz is not Ernest Stavro Blofeld. So, and what ended up happening is that he ended up being Blofeld. So I take that just saying, okay, well, it's one of two things. Either he's yanking our chain, or this really is true. I mean, I don't see why he would pull kind of something like that because it is the Joker. I mean, crazier things have happened before, but I mean, just take that for what it's worth. So, he also was asked about the rumors that that they reshot to make it funnier, like the Deadpool effect. And Ayer had this to say: I don't think you can do that because you shoot a scene, go back, and dudes are cracking jokes. It doesn't work like that. The movie was always funny. The movie was a lot of fun. So there you have it. There's some more confirmation about the rumors about, it wasn't a funny movie, so now we got to go back and make it funny because people didn't like, there was some backlash to Batman v Superman, and just because it was too dark and so forth. Going back and look at those trailers, even before all this happened, you can easily say that there was humor, and this movie was meant to be more fun than that. And that's, what even Zack Snyder had said before, that, it was the tone. This was supposed to be kind of like The Empire Strikes Back, or Chris Terrio said that before. Excuse me. It's comparing apples to oranges there, but sometimes sequels can be made darker. But given this movie overall, though, it's not going to be the case. I'm not saying it's not a dark movie. I'm just saying that this is kind of like the more kind of a fun popcorn flick and so forth. That's why I think I'm looking more forward to it. Anyway, though, last bit of news here. This one I would consider a little bit more important just because if you're familiar with the name Geoff Johns, okay. If you're familiar with DC Comics, and I'm talking about the actual comic books, you'll know that he's, had a big hand in that before and so forth. He had a hand in getting the CW's Arrow with the Flash, Legends of Tomorrow universes created on TV. Both shows that I really enjoy. I haven't had a chance to check out Legends of Tomorrow, but everything that he's done with Arrow and the Flash, I love those shows. So when he came on, when all this change was happening at DC Entertainment, he came on. He apparently even had a bigger hand in. He's having a bigger hand in Justice League. We know now that he helped co-write Wonder Woman. He's having a hand in Ben Affleck's Batman movie. And this is from BatmanNews.com, pretty much saying that, even though DC Entertainment has declined to comment for this story, they were able to confirm that the promotion is indeed true. Geoff Johns is not only Chief Creative Officer of DC Entertainment, but President as well. So this is like saying, okay, it's official now. And even when they did like the Justice League set visit, I always go back to that. It was known since then. So now here you have it. He's practically, if not the Kevin Feige of the DC Entertainment. So in my mind, it's almost a relief knowing that, okay, they have somebody over at, the DC Extended Universe calling the shots. Especially, it's not a novice. It's not somebody who's not familiar with this. It's not a suit. This is a guy who definitely knows the characters. Having somebody in charge of this, and like I said, he's a comic book writer. He's helped write movies before too now. So I'm really excited about this. I hope this takes the DC movies into the direction like. If all goes well with Suicide Squad, which I'm really hoping that it does, if it ends up being that I'm not saying and I'll go back to this. I'm not saying Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice was a failure. I'm not saying that at all. I really enjoyed that. I gave it a 4 out of 5. Okay. I really liked it. And I'm talking about the Ultimate Cut. I really, really liked it. Okay. I'm just saying that, everybody, the reception of that wasn't what everybody had hoped. If you love that movie, awesome. If you didn't like that movie, then how dare you? No, I'm kidding. No, that's everybody's entitled to their opinion, as I always say. But overall for DC, the backlash that it had, and whether it was the reviews or some of the or a lot of overall the amount of money that it made, it maybe didn't make as much money as they wanted. When I say they, Warner Brothers, then maybe this guy is like this guy can help steer them in the direction. Everything we've seen with Suicide Squad, the trailers, everything we've seen with the Justice League trailer, everything even we've seen with the Wonder Woman trailer. I mean, I don't talk about that because it really is like unofficially related to Batman, but I will say that, I saw that Wonder Woman trailer and I gotta tell you, I really enjoyed that. So, I'm really excited to hear this, so we will see what happens with that. All right, so moving on to the birthdays and anniversaries. Quite a few to get to tonight, but we're going to run through them pretty quick, so bear with me. All right, director Christopher Nolan, director of the Dark Knight trilogy, celebrates a birthday on July 30th. Yay. What if you haven't seen the Dark Knight trilogy, James Bond fans, go watch that. That is definitely a must, especially if you're a James Bond fan. You will definitely see some Easter eggs from previous James Bond movies. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Arnold, everybody chill, celebrated a birthday also on July 30th, who played Mr. Freeze in Batman and Robin. I'm not going to talk about that. moving on. Director Sam Mendes, director of Skyfall and Spectre, celebrated a birthday on August 1st. Definitely check out those James Bond movies, Batman fans, if you haven't already. Definitely really, really good movies, especially Skyfall. If you're a Batman fan, I think you're going to enjoy that. Giancarlo Gianni celebrates a birthday on August 1st. He was Mathis in Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace. Definitely when I have I'll tease this here, when I have the Allies and Friends episodes, we'll definitely be talking a lot more about him. Jeffrey Holder, who played Baron Samedi, I always pronounce that incorrectly, in Live and Let Die, celebrates a birthday on August 1st. Steven Berkoff, who played General Orloff in Octopussy, celebrates a birthday on August 3rd. And Michelle Yeoh celebrates a birthday on August 6th. She played Wei Lin in Tomorrow Never Dies. So, anniversaries-wise, there's only one this week. We'll find that there's not going to be really many anniversaries in the next month or two, and that's okay because we'll be talking about other stuff too. But this one, I completely forgot about, shockingly. It is The Living Daylights, which celebrate an anniversary on July 31st. It was released all the way back in 1987. Boy, do I feel old. So, I mean, let's talk about The Living Daylights for a minute. First of all, if you haven't had a chance to see this movie, it is... I would say it's kind of underrated. It is at a time, I think, like I said, in the late 80s, I think people were getting kind of bored with James Bond, or it's just because new characters and, or new franchises, new movies in general, say, Batman 1989. I'm just kidding. I know it's 2 years before that, but anyway, it's just that, I think there was kind of a James Bond fatigue, or maybe because they weren't trying anything new or not really bringing anything new to the table. I think that's kind of to the extent of The Living Daylights. I mean, with all due respect to Timothy Dalton and the movie, it kind of felt of more of the same when it came, kind of like a continuation of the Roger Moore era. Timothy Dalton was trying to play that more serious James Bond. And to make a long story short, it's just it deals more with the spy or the Russians versus, or the kind of that Cold War era of some British agents being killed and so forth. And it's a good movie. I won't say it's like my favorite James Bond movie. It's definitely not my favorite of the two Dalton movies. I like License to Kill way better, but it does have a lot of good Bond moments. I love the Aston Martin chase in there, of course. The cello chase that follows along with that. Like I said, Timothy Dalton, he played a great James Bond. I just think that, maybe he was almost ahead of his time in a way, just because not many people were ready with that, with how the jokey, kind of campy Roger Moore era. Not as an insult to Roger Moore. I think that, people maybe still wanted more of that, or like I said, maybe there was kind of a fatigue for James Bond. Not too sure, but one day we will do a review of that. So, for time purposes, let's move into the last segment of the show, Versus. This is the part of the show where we compare movies to the Batman or James Bond universes versus other franchises in the same wheelhouse. So, let's talk about last week's Versus. And to recap, last week's Versus was The Dark Knight versus Skyfall. Now, I told you it was going to be very controversial. I told you this was going to be, I called it a mile away that this was going to be a really good one. And as soon as I put the poll up on Twitter, people were even saying that I can't make up my mind. And, I hear you on that. I truly do. Now, having watched a little bit of The Dark Knight more recently and, even parts of Skyfall, I can honestly say I would go with The Dark Knight as the winner of this. And not just based on the polls. The polls ended up being 78% The Dark Knight and 22% at Skyfall. Is Skyfall kind of a rehashing of The Dark Knight? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I could say I borrowed elements of it clearly. The Dark Knight as a whole is, it's not just because Heath Ledger's Joker, and not the fact that he got an Oscar. I think just the story in general, it was, both of them are very compelling stories, like I said, and they're very, very similar in the same way is that, you have this terrorist and he's causing destruction wherever, if it's Gotham City, whether it's, London and so forth, and he's kind of trying to get revenge to a point, and the hero is struggling at the same time too with what to do. So, like I said, The Dark Knight is definitely probably the one I rank higher, but, it depends on my mood, because I think I could go back and watch Skyfall sometimes more than I could The Dark Knight. It just depends on the mood that I'm in. I love both movies. They're probably one's my favorite Batman movie, and the other one's probably one of my top 2 favorite James Bond movies. So this is a really hard decision for me to make. And, like I said, if you haven't had a chance to check out either one of them, like I said, James Bond fans, go watch especially The Dark Knight. If you've never watched any Batman movie, like I said, you will understand what I mean about the James Bond Easter eggs that are in there. Batman fans, if you've never watched a James Bond movie, definitely go watch Skyfall. The reason I say that is there are Batman Easter eggs in that, clearly. Both of them, like I said, 5 out of 5 movies, 5 bat signals, 5 martini glasses, some of my favorite movies there. So I'm going to do this again to you 2 weeks in a row. It's time to pin the Bat versus James Bond one more time. Yeah, this week's versus is going to be The Dark Knight Rises versus Spectre. I was debating about this, and just because we got off the anniversary of The Dark Knight Rises, I figured, why not? Spectre came out almost a year ago. Hard to believe. We'll be doing a review of that in November. But, The Dark Knight Rises and Spectre have a lot more in common, and next week when we revisit this versus, I'll talk a lot more about it, just how many similarities there are. And, I can, if I were to compare these two movies right now, I can say just, not just the length of the movies, but the tone of the movies, and even all the way to the endings, the bad guys in there and so forth. And, obviously Bane and Blofeld are way too different characters. But at the end, I think there's a lot more in common with these two movies than, maybe somebody hasn't had a chance to go over yet, but I really want to hear about this, what you have to say. I'm posting this poll on Twitter at Batman vs. Bond. Please vote. Please let me know what you think about it. Which one did you like better, The Dark Knight Rises or Spectre? Once again, Batman vs. Bond. That's why we call this the Batman vs. James Bond show. So, let me catch my breath here. Okay. And that about wraps it up for this episode of the Batman vs. James Bond show. Please subscribe on iTunes and or Spreaker. Make sure that you rate this show and leave a comment. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Batman vs. Bond, and like me on the Batman vs. James Bond Facebook page. If you are interested in being a guest on the show, please direct message me and we can set something up. Like I said, programming note once again, Suicide Squad review, all episode next week. Like I said, I will fit verses in there because I definitely want to hear what everybody has to say about that. In the meantime, like James Bond, I will return. Thank you for listening, everybody. Until next time, peace out and have a great week, and go see Suicide Squad.